it's her liberation is her insanity.
Yes.
Yeah, it is 100%.
It is.
Yeah.
To me, she chooses madness over compliance, and like that's the
happy ending.
That's the happy ending.
Yeah, even though it's like terrifying and so sad, but yeah.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
All right, everybody. It's 1 fucking hour time. I have Evan Husney. That's my fucking name, I guess. And this is the show where we have just 1 fucking hour to talk about one goddamn movie. And that's the show. And to my left, we got, as always, here live in New York City.
Yeah.
We have Big T, Tom Fitzgerald. What's going on, T?
Yes,
Welcome
as opposed to 3,000 miles, I'm yards away from y'all this time. So
that's right.
Hi, everybody.
That's right. Tease in New York. It's a big deal. Yeah. And to my right, we got also here under the same roof, just a few rooms over. We have returning champion for this very on-brand episode for you here tonight, Rame. We got Miss Rémy Bennett, returning champion.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Yes. So, and full disclosure, everybody, this was the only fucking day that I could record this goddamn episode to keep us on schedule. I'm trying to keep us on schedule because everybody wants the next eps from us. So, Marcus couldn't record tonight, and it was my fault. I kind of made an executive corporate decision, to let's get this show on the road because summer's wrapping up here and we got to finish this fucking series.
I know. I was thinking about that. Yeah. Is this summer going to end before this fucking series? But basically, like all of us, Marcus too is bouncing around. We're all like a pinball machine around America. And
he's in Montana.
It didn't line up quite. Yeah. And he's like no reception and shit. So we'll catch you on 96, homie.
Yeah, right. Homie. So we'll see you next week. But what are we talking about in case you don't know anything that we're talking about? We are in the midst of a summer series where we are covering films from the 90s, one from each year of the 1990s. Tonight is 1995, and for that, we are talking about Todd Haynes' film, Safe. The film. This is a film we've been wanting to talk about for a very long time.
Yeah.
So very excited about that.
It was safe for 1995 or 4 Rooms.
Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, that was very close.
Oh my god.
Really
oh my god.
Like it was a real toss up between this and 4 Rooms. An hour on 4 Rooms.
Okay, he's full of shit. That's never what's gonna happen. Okay.
Joking around.
Yeah, joking around. So tonight is 95, and then of course stick around to the end of the ep, and we're gonna tell you what we're gonna do for 1996. There was a lot of options. A lot of stiff competition, and I think we picked maybe the perfect 1996 film to do.
It feels right.
It does. So stay tuned until after that. One more other piece of business, of course, is the 1 fucking hour Patreon. Patreon.com/1fucking-hour is where you can sign up for just $5 a month and support the show. If you like what we're doing, it's the best way to give us it's like the tip jar.
Yeah, let get a big sweat here.
Yeah, yeah. Where's our taste, huh? Where's our taste of this?
Oh my god.
If you want to give us a taste, you go up to the Patreon. It's $5 a month, and you get also access to all of our bonus episodes and feature-length audio commentary tracks we've done, and you get 24-hour early access to every single episode, so you get to hear them before everybody else does. And it's just $5 a month. So, and if you're on YouTube and you want to keep your shit, there on YouTube instead of Patreon, you can click underneath the video, click the join button, and become a momen of the YouTube channel. $5 a month, same perks, same benefits, same shit. We appreciate it just the same. So thank you all to everybody else who signed up. Every week we're getting a few sign-ups, and we appreciate that a lot. So
right on.
Yeah, hell yeah. So, all right, shall we get into this? Tom, 1995, what's going on with 95? Do we know anything that happened in 95?
Well, other than the release of 4 Rooms. And that's it. Last reference. Actually, it's a big year for hip hop. I got to say, it's really flourishing on both coasts, you could say. And I think this is a shout out to Evan here.
Ooh.
This was the year of Liquid Swords by the Jizza of Wu-Tang Clan.
The best album.
Yeah, that's a great album. And all kinds of other. It's a nice big moment for hip hop, and you know, it's kind of a steady ascension of that genre by the mid '90s. The infamous Mobb Deep and all that stuff, but also indie was coming on strong. It's my little report here. You got Chemical Brothers. You've got Jagged Little Pill.
Oh shit!
Melancholy.
Alanis.
Right, Radiohead's coming on strong.
Oh,
Oasis
Smashing
is coming on
Pumpkins.
strong.
You're saying, yeah, for
Right
sure.
on. Yeah, exactly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like things that were established in the beginning of the decade are like firmly entrenched, indie rock and hip hop,
Yeah,
for lack of better terms. And so everyone's like major labeling out and
yeah.
you know, world touring and
For sure.
running the show.
Yeah,
So that's the middle of the decade.
And cinema, of course, is popping off. You got Seven comes out in '95. You got
Nice.
fucking Casino, which was a contender for.
Oh,
this
that
slot.
really was a contender. Yeah,
That was
we'll
a
get
contender.
there.
We'll get
to
there.
Casino.
Yeah, we'll definitely get
Tank Girl,
Yeah. Oh, yep.
Basketball Diaries.
Billy.
You know, and of course, you know, a film that's, you know, we were sort of talking about how like last week's episode, Natural Born Killers, was such a fail of social commentary and like the tabloid commentary. A film from '95 that did it better is the film To Die For. So shout out to that film, Gus Van Sant's film. But we're talking about tonight is Todd Haynes' Safe. And man, there's a lot to get to tonight. So we're going to try to hit it under an hour.
Frankly, I'm overwhelmed, and I'm deferring to you guys because I'm still collecting my thoughts.
Yeah.
After seeing it for the first time.
This is a big one.
Ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a big one.
It's yeah, there's a lot there. It's pretty heavy. We've been wanting to do it for a long time, so yeah, bear with us.
Let's do it. All right, and of course, yeah, Tom, this is your first time seeing it, so I'll be very interested to hear what you think. But here's the clock first, and here we go. 1, 2, 3. Boom. All right, so as customary here on the channel, I'm going to start with a little bit of a synopsis action here. This is taken from the Criterion release of this film, Safe. So Julianne Moore gives a breakthrough performance as Carol White, a Los Angeles housewife in the late 1980s, who comes down with a debilitating illness. After the doctors she sees can give her no clear diagnosis, she comes to believe that she has frighteningly extreme environmental allergies. A profoundly unsettling work from the great American director Todd Haynes, Safe functions on multiple levels as a prescient commentary on self-help culture, as a metaphor for the AIDS crisis, as a drama about class and social estrangement, and as a horror film about what you cannot see. This revelatory drama was named the best film of the 1990s in a Village Voice poll of more than 50 critics. It's a big fucking deal. Best movie of the 90s? Holy shit. And further to that, Wes Craven referred to it as the scariest film of the year. How about them?
Cool.
So that's a cool badge that this film
that
also
is
has,
cool. Yeah.
right? So, but let's just quickly, Tom. This is the first. You know, Rémy and I love this movie. We've seen it many times.
Right.
This is your first time seeing it. First of all, why is it your first time seeing it? And what did you think, or like what did you know about this movie before you saw it?
Right. Yeah, because we'll get into the film. Well, anybody who knows me knows that, like, you know, I've seen a lot of movies. I keep seeing movies over and over again. Every week, movie. I'm always seeing movies. But especially back then when I was younger, in my 20s, I was prioritizing The Love Butcher, the Worm Eaters, you know. And so I was occupied. And it was never against seeing like even a film like Safe, an indie film. I was just, I'll get around to it, but I'm busy, you know. So I never saw it, and I did have an impression that I got somehow, I think, from the advertising, the poster, the teaser, you know, video or something. I thought it was much more stridently like science fiction,
Right?
And it would have more like people in hazmat suits, like get into your homes right now. Like I thought it was more a dystopian sci-fi film, and I thought
because of the
know,
poster, the image of that guy, right?
And people did interpret it that way, misinterpret it. A lot of people did. Yeah.
So I'm not alone. Yeah. So anyway, so that seemed less interesting somehow. Although I like Haynes' work. I was really into Dottie Got Spanked, actually, the short film around that time. So,
Ooh, yeah.
it's a homecoming. I'm finally seeing it. I've seen The Worm Eaters, so now I can watch Safe. So
Yeah,
here we go.
yeah, exactly. So and I actually, now that you say that, I might have had the same preconceived notion about this movie because of the poster and the marketing. And it wasn't until I probably seen this movie maybe 15 years ago for the first time, but man, just an incredible haunting work. Very very confident in terms of the filmmaking that this has, like on display.
Assured.
Very assured. Every frame in this movie is dialed in, and of course we mentioned it before we started recording. Julianne Moore, maybe her finest performance.
Yeah.
Very dialed in as well. Very subtle, underplayed, but very effective and very real. In terms.
No, she shreds in this. I didn't even know she was that good an actress. I mean, this was really the proof in the pudding. Like, this is a performance that really is stand out. She should be very proud. And it's, we can get into it. I'm sure it's somewhat of a testament to the director in the sense that I think she really had simpatico with him. And again, we'll get into that. But when she's got the right role and she kind of gets it, she's on fire. It's her film.
Totally.
It is. It couldn't have worked without that kind of performance that like locks in so precisely. Yeah,
totally. And Raym, do you have any sort of personal history with this movie or background?
Yeah, I mean, I knew it from like being a kid. My good friend was a big Todd Haynes fan growing up, so recommended to me. Always loved it. And then it was about like start of the pandemic where I really started to think more about how kind of like prophetic this movie was and prescient. Not in, like we talked about this earlier, off camera, but like not in terms of it being a pandemic movie in terms of like the subject of sickness, but like in terms of how much the pseudoscience online wellness cult industry has sort of, just gotten out of control in the past like maybe 10, 15 years. And I started to kind of just clock how much this movie really sort of prophesized about where people would be at this point, especially sort of like white upper class women who are obsessed with like health and wellness and, getting toxins out of their bodies and sort of all of that kind of scary pseudoscience that comes with that. And
it becoming an obsession.
And the fixation around like staying safe, staying clean and clean beauty and health. And so I just started to think like how kind of incredible that Todd Haynes had tapped into something that has only accelerated sort of in prevalence. So
yeah, and how it's also like an industry is formed around it, and it's so commercialized, and it's everywhere. It's all over Instagram. It's everything, and it is kind of the seeds of that are in this movie, which is incredible. I think that is sort of the like when watching it today, it's like we think of COVID because you see they're wearing masks, and stuff in a few scenes, but that's not really to me what also reads as. Resonant to today, of course. So anyway, let's just really quickly, I was thinking before we get into the movie, I want to spend a lot of time on the movie because there's so many set pieces and amazing choices that are made. But I want to just quickly talk about Todd Haynes because he's such a fascinating, filmmaker, coming into notoriety, launching out of the gate with this wild film, a 43-minute sort of cult hit film that really only existed on bootleg for the longest time, which is Superstar, the Karen Carpenter story, which is an unauthorized account of Karen Carpenter's long, losing battle with anorexia. And of course, it's shot on Super 8.
And by the way, there's parallels. It's an oppressive suburban mediocrity that's and born in that is a lot of dysfunction.
Yes.
The Karen Carpenter story.
I just want to say that, the film is starring a cast of Barbie dolls. The whole film is made only with Barbie dolls, and that's what kind of makes it so infamous is this is his first work that he puts out into the world. Raym, what were you going to say?
Well, I was saying there's also like a really fascinating parallel between anorexia as an illness that's sort of collectively understood as like a female illness.
Right.
And often even the medical industry regards people with anorexia almost as being capable of sort of like solving their condition, that it's sort of like self-inflicted. There's a lot of like blaming the person who is sick for that, and that it's like a reaction to the patriarchy and a reaction to like gender norms, which in a sense it is. But there's another side to the disease where it's about sort of like upending those and sort of like rebelling against what a woman is supposed to look like and be. And it's sort of like a crazy transgressive thing. Right. So it's strangely similar to Julianne Moore, sort of transgressive. Yeah.
And I was just saying that now because you brought it up, it's like unconscious transgressive kind of hostile action towards norms.
Yes. Exactly.
Yes, which is very cool.
Exactly.
And then he would go on to do this film Poison in 1991, a sort of, Genet-inspired triptych of stories about transgression and stigma. And that won prizes at Sundance. And it's sort of, he became then, the centerpiece of this new queer cinema movement. And he became a lightning rod of controversy as well because, the National Endowment of the Arts financed that film. And so, a lot of right-wing groups were all over it. And so he was born out of a lot of controversy and was making headlines with both the projects, because the Carpenter estate was trying to shut down, Superstar, his film. And then, he received all the negative press for this other movie, but he was becoming a household name in indie film. And so this then, Safe, is his first sort of foray into a more straightforward narrative commercial, if you will, film, commercial in air quotes. But it's very interesting because we would come to know Todd Haynes as somebody who would go on to do, films like Far From Heaven, films that would get nominated for Oscars. I mean, his last film, did that get snubbed? I can't remember.
December was Oscar snub, but it got a lot of critical
it made a significant impact though.
It did. People loved it.
Lots of best lists. It was a lot of buzz.
Totally.
And there's like a lot of through lines like with all of these themes. The same thing with that, like sort of like the sort of, suburban American dream turned on its head and someone subverting those sort of like norms of that domestic lifestyle.
Absolutely.
He was cool. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sort of these like these riffs on like the melodramas of the 1950s, the Douglas Sirk, these sort of women's pictures, if you will, from Hollywood. And he's also referred to them as, quote, stories about women in houses, so which
in houses, great. Yeah,
it's great.
And it's cool. He was also talking about we earlier we read this awesome interview. I think it was in Sight and Sound, probably around 96. And he's talking about kind of like all of his influences. And with Superstar, he was saying too, like there was such this backlash after the 60s of all the countercultural stuff and the drugs and Manson and civil rights, where like the 70s became this total, like, sort of nostalgia, childhood kind of like pretty, like Brady Bunch, Partridge Family and the Carpenters. And it was kind of like the Nixon era of like, let's kind of put a sheen on things. And then his whole thing was like, kind of like, like, let's look at the cracks underneath that. So, and then with the Douglas Sirk stuff, it's very similar. It's like, we're looking at this perfection in suburbia, and then like what happens when like the malaise sets in. So
right, and it rots because its roots are based in the denial of like psychological depths and problems. It's just it's trying to like run what is it, like astroturf over like a raw jungle or something.
Yeah, and I think exactly in the 50s, like how that was that kind of like suburban American dream, and there was like a lack of like human connection. People were having to fall into these very strict like roles that were very stifling. You have Rock Hudson in a closet, eventually die of AIDS. You have all of this stuff that's sort of there's things lurking underneath that veneer, right? And then you get like the 70s, similar thing, and then the 80s is like that. Of course, the parallel, the Reagan 80s is very much a parallel to that 50s sort of white picket fence. And so what's cool with Safe is that it's, shot in 94, comes out in 95, but he's really setting it at 87.
I love
so
that.
It's pretty cool. We talked about how that's
very
pretty
cool.
rad.
That no one was doing that, to like have a rear view mirror on something less than 10 years ago which was the Reagan 80s, and the 90s were themselves different because that's kind of a pendulum swing somewhat in the 90s. Like I was actually just saying, like what's on the charts in the music is like melancholy and like oh dirty bastard, like it's not exactly the mid 80s anymore.
The grit was coming back. You know what I mean? It's like kind of that. It's a return to that grit and sort of another kind of counter.
It was becoming too oppressive. And with mediocrity and suppression of everything,
So it's wild. It's a really cool move, I think, for any just film to make a period piece from just 8 years prior. We're gonna set this film.
It's so fucking cool.
Into 8. That would be like if we set a film in 2016, but.
I know
things are all
like the Obama years, like next Friday, coming to your theater.
Yeah, exactly. So
what?
Very cool look to make a film, but it does seem like a world away from 95, which I think is very funny. And it is cool. It's like even the fashion, you're talking about, some of these housewives, what they're wearing with their, like emerald muumuus, are like, that seems like generations ago, but it was just only a handful of years prior to the filming of this movie. Yeah. So anyway, all right, let's dive into the movie now and talk about how this movie opens. Rémy, I'm going to throw it to you in a second here, but something that caught me off guard, like watching it again, is probably I hadn't seen it maybe 5+ years since the last time I'd seen it, and it was just like, man, that opening shot is so cool. The first person inside the car driving up. And immediately evoked Mulholland Drive for me. I just was thinking of David Lynch, the sort of dark, sinister synth music that was playing. I did not remember, and that sort of Angelo Badalamenti sort of vibe that was very foreboding, bringing us into this suburban gated, area, and then of course it cuts to Rémy.
So it's you're going to the gated community, very ominous. Then that you're in the garage, and she sneezes, right? And it's like the first kind of sign of things to come.
Bless you.
It's freezing in here.
And the way she kind of says, like, "Excuse me," or she's like, "It's cold in here," but the way she says it, it's almost like she's apologizing for even making a sound. Like right off the bat, it's like this woman is apologizing for even. Like we were talking about Tom being human, right? And so it's
like having like some biological response, that's like so impolite and imperfect. Forgive me for having, olfactory glands and a respiratory system.
And like we were talking before we started filming, like just kind of this idea about like these insanely restrictive gender norms that have prevailed. But it's like this denial that women are actually human beings, right?
Just to clue the audience in.
They need to be little dolls.
Yes, exactly.
Just to clue the audience in, prior to recording, these two were going one fucking hour on menstrual cycles.
We were.
I kind of wish we were recording that, but go ahead.
And women shaving their legs.
And women shaving their legs,
which was mind blowing. Like everyone, especially the boys. Just take a deep breath and think about that,
Yeah. Like having to shave your legs.
Women's unshaved legs. If they didn't shave their legs,
they would be ostracized from society. Yes. So anyway, we went deep. We went deep on this shit, and everyone was like, "Why am I not recording?" But
I know. I felt like y'all needed to hear this.
So anyway, there we go. So then we cut to the interior of the house, and to me, this is incredible. That it's really the first time we're seeing these two introduction to these two characters is. Julianne Moore, Carol, lying on her back with her husband, missionary style, just sort of grunting and what do you even call that motion? I don't know, just like riding on top of her where she's just disassociating, looking up to the ceiling with a mixture of sort of discomfort, slight pain, and really kind of disassociation. So like right away, like it's also the perspective is totally subjective, right? We're like with her. And I think like, we take that for granted, but showing a woman's perspective in bed, feeling dissatisfied, and like from her perspective of what that really is like, I think is like that's a pretty cool like feminist perspective. It make like Karen Arthur's another filmmaker who actually did that in a movie called Legacy in 1975, and it was like totally groundbreaking. But like that's not really talked about. It's like, like what's that experience for a woman?
Yeah.
It's not always pleasurable. Like
to exhibit the face of dissatisfaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During sex.
Right.
Yeah, right. And it's
in a way, like in a Douglas Sirk film, for instance, or something made prior, like that couldn't have really been explored in that way. But in the 90s, we can start talking about that.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's also just like a great way to open a movie too.
Yeah,
it is, and so then from that, it's also just a great way to set up this character we're about to follow, and this life that we're about to get into, which is the life of a very 1980s suburban housewife or homemaker, as she calls herself in the film, and it also shows us. Especially in the San Fernando Valley, this idea of white flight, people fleeing into the suburbs, and just the sort of sterilization of the suburbs and the isolation of it as well, and the homogeny of it, that's sort of subtly making you insane. And I think
antiseptic atmosphere.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I think it's almost like you could make a metaphorical interpretation of this movie, that it's sort of that lifestyle that she is developing an allergy to. That's what it is. That is causing this, is this sort of that lifestyle, which and then when you see her in the film throughout these first 10 minutes, as she's wandering through these, very well production designed living rooms. Something tells me that they weren't, and that was just somebody's house that they went to. But who knows? But it's these great, beautiful wide shots of her wandering through these labyrinths of 80s tchotchkes, and Tom, it reminds me a lot of Dream Tackle when we used to go, like the stuff they would sell there.
Yeah.
Shout out Greenpoint.
Shout out to Dream Tackle.
Dream
and it's
Tackle.
the white carpets and a lot of the like seafoam teal and the coral and
the coral lamps.
The coral lamps.
The coral lamps, all that stuff. And but she is shown, in these wide shots where she almost, with her, the way she dresses and everything, and these kind of these sort of like same color scheme floral dresses kind of thing, like she's almost one of the many tchotchkes that could be in that room. Totally. And that's just really great. Like just so many great frames that are suitable for framing, as you say, Tom, just that are snapshots of that life in the suburbs.
And that very particular, like you said, the Sherman Oaks, upper middle class, rich suburban, like enclave that like the word safe in the movie is like, used in multiple meanings. And it's Todd Haynes was talking about like the idea that these like suburban gated communities are almost like living in an airport. Like it's like totally, it's like air conditioned and carpeted, and you're never quite in the human world on the ground. Like you're separated from the rest
safe.
of humanity.
It's all manicured.
It's manicured.
The human and the natural world. It's
right.
Disneyland homes,
And you're protecting yourself from whatever you fear is on the other side of those gates, right? Like whatever's on the outside. Well, you created a fortress.
I got to say, I mean, this is specifically Los Angeles, and there's some indirect references to like how heated up things are getting around the mid 90s. Well, this is the 80s, but then actually, 80s gang violence, Watts, Compton, not pretty, very ugly, very real, very urban. And there's the white flight, like you were talking about, because like, let's just say Compton is a million miles away from Sherman Oaks, where they're out or wherever. And it's really just a few miles away. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And, which is, it's kind of out of the chronology of the film, but it's just worth mentioning that sort of what's going on in those urban environments is such a great choice of how that's, how that's discussed in this film, which is through her stepson's essay for class about the concerning growing of gang violence.
So dark.
There are more and more gangs in the Los Angeles basin, plus many more stabbings and shootings by AK-47s, Uzis, and MAC-10s.
Incredible. And so is Todd Solondz.
It is.
Yeah. It's a tribute to to Haynes for doing this other Todd's
Todd
kind
doing
of
Todd.
movie scene before Todd. He did the other Todd before.
I know.
Todd.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah,
Right.
it's like right out of storytelling.
It is.
So big up to that.
Yeah, I love
and very
that.
similar. It's like there's a parallel. It's like New Jersey in the 90s
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
kind of,
Right.
suburban protection and that very
Right.
small-mindedness,
Yep.
right next to New York City, but like very protected and
Yeah.
very insular.
Perfect.
And then you have the Sherman Oaks, but like you said, there's Compton and all the stuff that's what's going
Right.
on in the
Right.
culture at the moment. They are in their own little world, right?
Totally.
Like just
Mhm.
like, their comfort blanket and,
Yeah, and we're also seeing just great little snapshots of her life. The life of a homemaker. And what your existence is. Culturally, like a lot of these women at the time are giving up everything. Any sort of career ambition or anything they wanted to do in life, just to kind of be a homemaker. And she goes. We see shots of her at a 80s aerobic class, which feels like a visual trope that started here that we see, that we still see today.
Yeah.
You can see it on Netflix
Totally.
right now.
Yeah. The high camp of like tacky colored leotards,
Yes.
and big hair like poodling around
Yes.
to like Madonna. It's
Yeah.
right
Totally.
here, folks,
Right.
in this film.
It
and
is.
so like authentically done for the first
Yes.
time in a very true way.
Yes.
Now it's become so reductive. I feel like there's
Sure.
so much stuff that's ripping that up. Like that show, there's a show Physical, where it's doing it in such a heightened sort of like cheesy way. And this
Totally.
really hits the nail on the head. It's like, it's really capturing that like mise en scène, that whole
It
world.
is.
And in
It
terms
is.
of the rituals too, I think like it can't be stressed enough.
The
Like
rituals.
you were saying, Evan, like giving up everything, right? Like no career, no sense of self, no purpose. Like you are literally in this like zombified existence of like going to have lunch with the ladies, going on the diet, going to the exercise class, picking the stuff from the the laundromat. And it's like this movie is really like exploring like what is that to have a life with that lack of that sense of alienation from yourself. And that does drive a person completely insane.
The Stepford Wives address that,
Right.
Totally.
in the
And
70s.
totally. And something that I just, jumped in my brain as we were watching this, because this is the horror of all of this, right?
It is.
And it feels like this is the 80s housewife version of Eraserhead. It's what this movie is.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
And it does, because there are scenes that like evoke that
Pastel Eraserhead.
totally.
And because totally. And because this is horrific. Like to be going through that as a human being, like stripped of your identity, stripped of your direction, like you are kind of in a prison, right? And that's kind of the metaphor he's saying. Like you're creating your own prison with these objects,
right?
Filling your life, believing that these objects are what makes us human and validates us and gives us purpose,
Right.
But it's obviously does the opposite. And
Sure.
You see it with the I don't know, jump to that, but like the couch, the scene with when she orders the couch and it comes and it's the wrong color. And it's incredible. Like, it's supposed to be seafoam and it's black.
I love
and it's
that.
just like that.
I love that we get to live in the drama of that. Like, it's the wrong couch. It doesn't go with anything. And then the housekeeper is upset, who also feels like something out of storytelling.
Right.
But
she asked for the milk. She's like, por favor.
Leche, por favor.
Leche, por favor.
Yeah, oh my God, so horrible.
Fulvia, could I have some milk? Sí. Some leche, por favor? Sí, seguro que sí.
And that's disturbing on a whole other level. But anyway, then we're seeing these other just like perfect snapshots of these suburban, women at this time. Like, when Julianne Moore's character, Carol, she goes to visit with her friend and they're sitting and the friend is drinking like a Pepsi. That looks like it could be like a New York Times photo of the year, and then it cuts to Julianne Moore and she's got the glass of milk and they're talking, and it's so perfectly captured, that world. And, Rémy, as you said, then the wrong couch is delivered is kind of the first unsettling, destabilizing thing that happens to her. And that kind of cracks her facade, right?
And the blankness, I think we should probably mention too, like her characterization and who Carol White is. Like her last name's White, right?
Perfect.
She drinks milk. She lives in this white world with the white carpet and the like it's this very bizarre, vacuous existence where she's this almost like blank slate. Like it's like, and Julianne Moore was saying in an interview, like she didn't push down on her larynx when she was speaking. Like she was like, this person wouldn't even have that much power
to speak
or like authority to be speaking with like that depth of her voice.
Project.
Like, she couldn't project or like root the voice. It was like it had to be in this place where like it was lost. Like she's almost like nearly paralyzed every time she's trying to articulate. Like she can't even form the words. Like it's like the voice is almost completely gone because she has no voice, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like this. It actually weirdly reminded me too in Three Women, like in the way that like they kind of deal with feminine identity and like Shelley Duvall. Her character has this like blankness at first. It's like it's almost like we can kind of project onto that person.
Right. Well, she's a personality that's made up from like a Good Housekeeping articles, otherwise, and it's empty. It's being filled by like just mediocre mainstream ideas of femininity,
Right. And there's also so I just wanted to mention real quick before I forgot, like the feminine mystique too. Like that was a big book that came out that talked about like the malaise of suburban housewives, and so that was like very zeitgeisty too. Like probably in Todd Haynes' is like sort of like childhood and stuff about
for sure.
Kind of like they called it something about like the ailment that cannot be named. Because it was like, it became like an epidemic of this like sense of depression and malaise sweeping through these communities of women who were just like listless and so
like Betty and Mad Men is an example.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah, sure, exactly.
Yeah. So so we're getting these great, just so spot on moments of this character. And then things start to turn when Carol White is driving around in Sherman Oaks, and she's behind a truck with exhaust that's sort of spewing out of the back of it, and she begins to cough incessantly. And this is when she basically it's a beautifully rendered scene, but also very terrifying of basically someone having either the full on experiences of whatever allergies she has, or just a full-on panic attack on the street there. And we see her panicking, driving around, going into a parking garage and panicking, and this beautiful wide shot of her opening her car door and just coughing her guts out, and
just a pure filmmaking moment. It's just a really nice set piece of his, because it's a visual rendering of this character we're getting to know. And she hasn't behaved like this up until right then.
Yeah.
And you're really seeing a lot here that like she's at the very surface of this perfect veneer. There's this like raging torrent of dysfunction.
Yeah.
And it all just comes out. And she kind of, in a way, it's like she just lets herself have this moment. I think that's part of it too. Like she just kind of is feeling like she has a problem. Like, yes, you can sometimes cough like crazy if you're like in a congested, smoggy situation. But I think she just takes that opportunity to just sort of let it all hang out. And it's a panic attack that I think sort of mutates into this like big, just like burst out tearing, crying thing. And she just lets all her emotions come out like in this guttural kind of primal way is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
Because often in this film, she does just start crying, and I think that it just shows that these high emotions are right on the surface of calm, and this is the first time like the calm surface is burst, and it's just very effectively rendered. And like it's weird to escape to like a fucking parking garage too, which is not exactly like an open field,
the cleanest area.
It just feels really gross and like concrete, oppressive,
and very LA too, like
very LA.
Yes.
Yeah. And even just like seeing her on that freeway, it's so LA.
But you're right though. It's like a hellish landscape that's very LA, like parking garage breakdown.
Yeah, totally.
It's like like possession kind of equivalent.
It is. It reminds me of possession in a lot of ways.
Oh my god, yes.
But just to
and also I love the talk radio. Sorry, and there's always traffic and talk radio, which is
I love it.
Very, very 80s.
Very 80s. just to keep the train going. So I'm having a little, almost a panic attack myself at the clock.
Oh, no.
So, just real quick, I'm just going to mention this great, amazing, quiet moments of malaise with her following this, big wide shots with those slow zoom push-ins with that outstanding score. There's a lot of moments like that are colored in this section of the movie following this that are beautiful. You know, she's starting to wander out by the pool in the middle of the night. She can't sleep.
I love that.
Kind of Three Women-y, by the way.
Very Three Women-y. Yes.
Totally. And those set pieces are just so beautifully done. Shout out to everyone involved in that.
What's interesting with the pool thing, you said Three Women. Obviously, there's the pool parallel, but that's a bit of a trance. It's almost like in that moment, there's like a trance fugue that's happening. And then her character does split. Yeah. And transform into like the second version of Carol, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
True. And as we mentioned it earlier, this is when she meets up with her friend at this Valley restaurant, and here we're just seeing these miserable bored women talking about these fad diets, that they're on fruit diets. Again, trying to cleanse the toxins that are in them, very, very of the time, and very of the time now. I mean, there's people we know who participate in that. And so that's just, again, furthering sort of what Todd's exploring with the film. Then we see this set piece again where she is almost start to disassociate. Again, this fugue thing you were talking about. There's and this film does have a sense of humor, as well too.
Yeah, totally.
Which is great that it has. And there's a set piece where Carol and her husband, who's great in this movie as well. I can't remember his name. Xavier or something.
Something. Yeah.
He's the asshole stepdad from Terminator 2, everybody. But he's great in this movie, and he's kind of rendered in a way that you would not think. I think a movie today or a lesser filmmaker writer would depict him more as like an asshole. Someone who's more of a source of conflict.
Thinking the same.
But I think he's maybe thinking all those feelings, but it's all on his face. It's not what he's saying. But
he is empathetic and he does care. Yeah. And as she's in over her depths about whatever's happening with her, he's at a loss too. He doesn't even know where to start with this. And he's hapless is the word.
Hapless. Because you can see there's no passion. You know what I mean? There's no dynamic between them. There's no life between them. And then the son is the stepson who's just completely like this ghost, where she has no maternal, he has no. So that's part of it. It's like these people, maybe they're nice people deep down, but like there's no equipped. Authentic, energy,
family core.
No,
they're all just living in a vacuum, sort of like ghosts. So
So they, Carol and her husband go out with another couple. This guy tells a very stupid joke about a vibrator, and we changed the batteries.
But the good news is, we were able to change the batteries.
But she's like half asleep during that, and people are really getting concerned that she is disassociating. Then we get this amazing set piece, one of my favorite set pieces in the movie, which is the horror movie perm, getting a perm scene, which again is part of the ritual of a housewife. Got to work on the hair, and so she goes and gets the perm, and we see these beautiful close-up shots of just the gel being poured on like the curlers. And,
the chemicals. It's like
chemicals.
Chemicals. Those are the fucking chemicals.
Those are the chemicals, the toxins.
Those are the real chemicals.
They are the real chemicals. And she has a bloody nose, and it's, very terrifying. And it's, it's kind of a horror movie depiction of this sort of monotony, of the
horror of like a beauty salon.
And also keeping up appearances that you have to do this.
The performance of that feminine appearance. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Like basically the female model is at the shop, let's let's keep the doll pretty, let's maintenance.
And you have to, and that's the thing. It's like if your existence is to be that pretty housewife, like you don't have a choice. You have to keep that up. So it's like it is this bizarre monotony that feels so disconnected from something like soulful in your life. It's just about like, who am I doing this for? And she has no sense of her own self and something that satisfies her identity.
And something tells me, I'm not the person to ask, but something tells me that is huge right now in 2024, like as an attitude.
Oh yeah.
face
and, like,
tuning and everything.
Well, now it's the Botox and it's the fillers and it's the the facials and so it's like this has just gotten it's just there's a through line. It's
with social media, it's really exploded.
Amplified.
And the pressure, you know what I mean? So
totally.
Right.
All right,
it's crazy.
Evan.
So to keep it moving, then she goes to a doctor, and she talks to a doctor, and the doctor basically says, "I think you need to see a psychiatrist," and that's very disturbing because now we're getting into the mental health aspect of this. It's accompanied with some dark synth music, and then there's that great scene, as I mentioned earlier, where she's wandering outside. In the middle of the night, she can't sleep, and there's like a security patrolman of the gated community that finds her in a spotlight. That feels very Mulholland Drive. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Great little set piece there. But then she discovers the next day a pamphlet. Do you smell fumes? Are you allergic to the 21st century? And that's sort of amazing. And but putting her on the path of sort of finding out what's going on with this, getting into the sort of self-help world to figure out what's going on with her.
And seeing that poster, like that flyer, it's the first time she's validated. So
validated,
like
right.
We forgot to mention that it's like throughout this time of she's like, I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling off. She's trying to explain to the people around her, and the men are. It's very the entity too, where like Barbara Hershey's character is like explaining, and the doctor and the dad and the whatever the ex-husband are like, you're crazy, what's wrong with you? Nothing. It's all in your head. So there's also this element which also is kind of like in a lot of feminist literature.
Rosemary's Baby.
There you go. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so where it's sort of like the woman is hysterical, it's all in her head, she's not really sick. So she's going to these doctors and the allergy doctor. It wasn't until she sees the flyer where she's like, okay, someone hears me, someone understands me.
Right. And so then she gets the validation there, but then guys, we go to maybe my favorite scene in the entire film. I know, Tom, it's yours as well. It's an incredible set piece of suburban horror, which is the baby shower sequence.
Oh, dude.
But and first you're sort of seeing these very phony, fake facade women just pretending. They're basically playing pretend in their lives.
Yeah.
Oh, did you wrap that yourself? And stuff like that. And it's amazing. It's so well rendered. Todd has an incredible eye for authenticity in that moment.
Yeah.
But then we see the scene. Tom, tell us what happens.
Oh, okay. Take it to the bridge. Well, for some reason, our Carol, right, our lead character. They decide to put I would say too old aged child, one of their daughters, who's a few years too old to be like sitting on a lap. So she's literally like larger than the scale of like a little, like 2 or 3 year old. And she's sitting there awkward with a little girl. And behind the little girl, the woman whose lap she's on is kind of falling apart in a way that this woman doesn't understand. The viewer doesn't understand. She's kind of like a malfunctioning robot and non-communicative, nonverbal. And I just love that there's a heat of mental illness that is permeating behind this little girl. And she's like, just intuitively goes like, bye-bye, and just like gets off that lap and just kind of wanders over to the other women like, I can't do that.
Can't do that.
Whatever the hell's going on back there, And the faces she makes are like horror movie disturbing. And there's a rising tone of unsettling synth noise that just perfectly placed cue. And then there's of course the disturbed reaction, but still controlled reaction.
Yep.
It's all about control. That's another word. Of the other women there, like, looks like maybe someone's tired or something like that. Like trying to sweep it under the rug. I mean, what do you guys think that scene?
Totally.
Jesus.
I mean, that scene is incredible. Just shout out again. Great choice of a slow zoom with the wide shot with the kid on her lap, and as we mentioned earlier, like she's like kind of her legs are spread a little bit. It's very weird, and like there's some like something oddly sexual about it.
If it was a painting,
like heat, like there's a weird, I don't know,
energy. Yeah. It
would be a disturbing painting, like you're saying, suitable for framing.
Totally,
that would be a very bizarre, odd sort of like, I can't think of like Francis Bacon or something.
Oh, definitely,
like painting.
Sure.
Well, there is a combination between like Francis Bacon, like Gregory Crewdson, that photographer who does these amazing like suburban, and even an Edward Hopper. Like there's something about this framing of it, like where those depict suburban life, but with some kind of like melancholy, subversive element
A
there.
little off.
There's so much. There's so much like like symmetrical porn going on, in a lot of these wide shots, and everything is like very mannered and symmetrical, but yet there's something a little off, and it's her usually in the frame.
Her face specifically.
Yeah, she's off. She's kind of off of the margins. She's not quite lining up with the symmetry of the shot, and she's just not right with this world. And it's so well done. It's literally, again, it's like it's almost like
it's incredible.
It's like
pure filmmaking.
It's pure filmmaking. It's Julianne Moore doing an incredible job knowing this character through and through, but also not. But also letting the filmmaking help tell the story of the character.
And we were
the
saying,
style is
sorry,
so perfect.
The style,
sorry, no, please stop.
No, just briefly, if we just live with the scene for one more second and then move on. But just I had a reaction. We were rewatching it, and I thought, to be kind, like I love David Lynch, but like I feel if David Lynch handled that set moment in a film,
baby shower,
it would have gotten a little big. Like it would have actually kind of overheated it slightly, and it didn't necessarily need it to be like really impactful and disturbing. But Haynes has this great control.
Yes.
And I find it more satisfying than going big. Most people would be, all I'm trying to say, and forget David Lynch, but just anybody would be tempted to go a little bigger.
Yep.
But he keeps it right under control.
Dude, he's always with this movie keeping it just at minus 12 dB. He's never going into the orange. Because
there's like the dark humor's there, but the genuine humanness is so it has that perfect symmetry of those elements.
Perfect.
And something that Julianne Moore said about this, kind of when she descends into her illness, into her sickness, she's rejecting her environment, right? And she's rejecting that alienation and almost like grounding herself in her body, which is very strange. Like as much as the illness kind of drives her into a state of madness, it's like bringing her into her body in a way that she hasn't. And even in that scene, it's like it is like a dog or an animal like in heat, who's like heaving and having this like breathing in a way that she wasn't accessing that primal animalistic part.
Primal's the right word. Yeah.
Right. She's becoming more primal. And then when she starts talking about this environmental illness, it's giving her a sense of purpose that she's never had before. So all of a sudden she's learning, and this is what's happening now with all of the wellness misinformation that's going on and influencers and Instagram. It's these people who maybe felt like adrift in their life. And they're taking all this pseudoscience and misinformation and kind of becoming fixated on the knowledge of it.
Because
and
they're so
learning
lost,
about it.
they think that they've found a solution.
Right.
But I was just thinking that like there's a theme here. I don't know if we have time or interest, but like I wanted to plant a seed that this film I found really interesting because thematically speaking, I feel like it's her liberation is her insanity.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
It is.
Tom, 100%.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
No, but I have to say, like, okay, it's ever going to kill me.
Yeah.
That is the ending. We'll get to it later. But like, to me, she chooses madness over compliance. And like, that's the
happy ending for her.
That's the happy ending.
Yeah. Even though it's like terrifying and so sad, but
No, for sure. I'm glad you got that in. Let me just keep it moving. I'm going to steamroll through some beats here.
Yeah,
so
please.
We can get it going,
okay, let's do this.
Some of these we don't need to spend a lot of time on. But there's, again, another trope you'd see in many movies after the fact is this sort of seminar, VHS seminar, great, showing the sort of VHS promo of the self-help, program. You'd see that in a million films still up to this day. Very well done that he did that. You see the scene where she goes to the allergy doctor, which is very disturbing, a little Cronenberg-esque.
Oh, yeah.
Getting all of the different allergy tests.
37 injections in one arm.
Yeah, and she reacts to that, of course. And then we see kind of her safe room in her house, and now she's starting to, live a completely different life, where she's stripping everything down, as much as she can. But then we get to this very terrifying moment that's perfectly rendered, maybe the scariest moment in the film, when she goes to pick up the dry cleaning, and then someone's like, they're spray cleaning the dry cleaners, and then she has a full-on, convulsions on the floor and like having a seizure. And they rush her into the ER, and just so disturbing. And that's when she sees as she's recuperating, she sees a TV advertisement for Renwood, which is this sort of wellness center devoted to people who have these sort of environmental allergies or illnesses. And we got to spend a big chunk of the rest of the episode talking about this because it's the back half of the movie.
Please.
But we go to this wellness center and we meet Frank from Succession here, who is playing this sort of guru of the wellness center, and it's very interesting. And Rémy, I'll let you talk about it because Todd had something very interesting about the introduction of this character and others in this section.
Yeah.
We should mention it because it's interesting.
Well, it's cool. It's sort of like what Todd Haynes was saying that like this section of the film is kind of like a condemnation of kind of like left-leaning New Age philosophies, but he also he kind of misleads the audience a few times. So when she first arrives at the wellness center cult kind of thing of self-help community, she's met by a black woman who's like the first woman of color we're seeing in the film.
Yeah.
The self-help guru leader describes himself as having AIDS and an immune disease and with these like New Age philosophies. So Todd Haynes was saying he kind of wanted to do like a 1-2, like kind of a trick where like you're kind of a left-leaning indie audience might be like, oh, okay, well, it seems like he's bringing some interesting inclusive elements. Yeah. These are good people. Maybe she's going to be led down a positive path, and we're going to find that arc for her. That's like the positive arc.
Yeah, or like Todd was even saying, like, well, if the audience knows I'm gay, and then here's presumably a gay character who has AIDS, then we're gonna trust him. But,
He said he was like, oh, that. He's like, I wanted to trick the audience into thinking that was a reliable character.
Right.
And he's like, and then we.
Guy with AIDS equals hero.
Yeah.
Right. And he was like, but that, that's not the case. So it's like, as we learn more about who this person, it's really cool and ahead of its time. I think
is
to be
like
talking about that stuff.
Subverting that expectation is really amazing. And of course, we learn this, he takes a dark turn, but I think the first evidence that we get of, and it's very pure cinema. Maybe this guy isn't all what he's cracked up to be. Is he lives in this giant fucking white mansion up at the top of the hill while everybody else is living like they're in fucking Costa Rica huts or something.
Igloos, yeah.
Which is like that's like the classic sort
cult
of
leader,
cult leader thing, and it's all about what he's professing to be teaching them is all about self-love and empowerment. But then what he's really saying in a lot of these seminars, which is very similar to like the Nexium stuff or the Synanon, like we talked about the sort of like therapy cult, the cult of self-help and self-improvement, where it becomes about victim blaming and blaming the person, where like you can fix this if you only loved yourself more, if you thought more positively, which is also very...
like you're sick because you made yourself sick.
And because you made yourself sick. So there's...
The self-blaming.
Todd Haynes was also inspired by this writer named Louise Hay, who was like a self-help like advocate in the 80s for people with AIDS.
Yeah.
And her whole thing, and so Todd talks about how this was an allegory for this kind of blaming mentality, where like she was basically saying like, if you think positively, you will cure yourself. If you do this, and so it became about like taking the onus off of the culture or the circumstances and chaos in nature that we can't control, and then blaming the individual. So it's very like Nancy Reagan too, like just say no. Like it was kind of this mentality of, we're not collective anymore. We're going back to the individual and you're responsible for your circumstances.
Right.
It's not the social determinants of health that the culture has created or the circumstances you were born in or nature.
Or all the chemicals that are everywhere around us at all times that none of us really think about to this day.
Right.
Of course. Right. And it's that pseudoscience, of this guy. And that's a real shitty thing when we hear him espousing all this. About your if you just think positive thoughts, it's very cynical that you'll be, sort of cured of all this stuff. So anyway, and of course how he talks about how he stops reading the news and he stops reading the papers. And so he's not, he's giving you that information.
Toxic news
is going to affect your immune system, so it's a great rendering of that sort of, type of, evil cult fuck in that movie, but subtly done, of course, like everything is in this movie. But then we sort of see that as she's there at this facility, she's developing this sort of friendship with another guy there. And Tom, you were sort of saying that it lends at a possible future.
I thought maybe there was some breadcrumbs towards like a happy ending in the sense of, she winds up having a relationship with this seems like a genuinely nice guy that she's making lasagna with,
right?
And it also, you do see her not just flirting with her lasagna buddy, but she's warmer and has a sense of humor and is kind of seems to have her guard down. And it feels like her exchanges with this guy, for whatever reason, are really humanizing her.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of sweet.
Right.
And it just felt like it was breadcrumbs towards maybe a future for her having a more functional life.
Yeah.
Long-term relationship with this guy or not, it's like it felt like there was a hint.
Yeah.
That there's a future for her that's less just about like crushing, oppressive mental illness.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly.
Totally.
But I don't know.
No, 100%.
Never made a sequel.
Safe too. And then we see shout out, very late cameo in the film in the runtime. We see Jessica Harper from Suspiria,
Awesome.
and Phantom of the Paradise. In this movie, and there's this great shot, bird's eye shot of them, of Carol and her laying down as the they're like, there's this weird cultist chanting, and then we hear this ambulance sirens as the old man on the premises has died, and it's very disturbing and destabilizing. It's a great image, great little set piece and detail there. But the best little visual that we see at this wellness center, which of course is the confusing marketing image of the movie, which is this man in wide shot that we see wearing this sort of like mask and bodysuit protective.
You only ever encounter him in a very wide shot, basically in a distant field, and he walks really oddly, and it's kind of begottenish.
Yeah.
Does anybody know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's Snapper. Yeah, for sure. It's amazing.
Oh, yeah. And it also does border. There is a little bit of a dark humor there. I mean, it's
totally
right. It's totally sad and bizarre, but it's absurd.
It's funny. It is.
And it's showing. It's like, these people are looking for solace, and they're just retreating from the world, like deeper and deeper and deeper. And she's just going in that direction as the movie kind of like.
And he's like the most extreme example. And just to explain, he's completely covered head to toe in some kind of thing guarding him, right?
Yeah.
Like goggles and earphones and
It's like
just
a robot.
Like full cover.
And he's walking very oddly to move forward.
Yep. So then we see, Carol's husband and her husband's son visit her at the retreat, and they're kind of taking it all in. And there's a very sad part where I think he's subtly underneath it all trying to figure out, like, is this the new normal? Like, is this what's going on? For now, because she's living in this little igloo that she's moved into, which she's all now kind of totally protected from the outside world and living in this, almost more of what we would associate as a prison. But as we were saying, it's more freedom for her, where the other life was more of a prison. And
it's interesting, because Tom, you were saying earlier too, like the two environments really do mirror each other.
They do.
Like you have the San Fernando Valley, and then they're just different sides of the coin.
Yeah, right.
They're both isolation, two places of isolation.
Totally. Totally.
That she's hiding. She's hiding, from the world.
Exactly. And then again, this is kind of the Oscar moment for me in terms of her performance in this movie, is when the guy she has a blossoming friendship / relationship with says, "Oh, it's Carol's birthday tomorrow. Let's have a cake for her." And they give her this cake, and they sing her, a song, and then she delivers, like, they're like, speech, and then she delivers this very nervous and half sentences, very trying to where she's kind of recycling the information halfway that she's been taken in from this fucking guy, the cult leader guy. But then it's just her performance of that monologue, if you will, or that speech, is very real.
Just that I really hated myself before I came here, and so I'm trying to see myself, hopefully, more as I am, more.
And coming from a very real place, and it's something that's it's amazing, it's incredible. She deserves all the credit for that.
And I think that's so important, because she says she's like, I'm still learning the language.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so interesting, like especially with the self-help cult thing. It's like a lot of time these communities, like they create their own linguistics and their own lexicons of language. And you kind of learn that speak. And then that's part of what it fills that empty void, and that becomes your identity, right? And it's almost like all that self-loathing that she had, like whatever is happening at this wellness center is filling that vessel for her, you know.
And that's the new language her new family speaks with each other.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And you were sort of saying earlier in the episode that she sort of, chooses madness, over isolation or over, her other life. And that's, a dark thought, but it is somewhat freeing.
She descends into it by the end. She completely descends. She kind of gives herself over to that madness.
Yeah. Totally.
Instead of the conformity, she's choosing to live in this completely subversive, transgressive, out of the norm realm. And that's better than living this world of oppression and obedience.
Totally. Just with 2 minutes on the clock left, I just want to hear what you guys have to say on this. The idea of, this being a, because this illness, this sort of environmental allergy is something that people really have researched and looked into and they can't really quite explain. And the way that it's rendered here, leaving it open, leaving it vague, and not giving you the answers of, is this something purely psychological or is it something real? But there are hints at it. I mean, she gets like sort of welts on her face, and she looks worse throughout the movie, and it is giving her some physical, things. But then again, no one in the medical field can describe it. So, just thoughts on that, if you guys have any.
Well, I just think she looks worse for wear as the film goes on. I'm assuming because of a radical change in her diet. God knows what, like some kind of insane idea of a diet, and then she's probably taking there's a shot where she's got a mountain of supplements next to her.
Yeah,
and she's also having those injections, so she's probably taking a lot of weird stuff that's like not doctor approved. I would say,
True.
Yeah.
Rémy?
And I mean, that, like at the end of the day, like we said, it's an allegory, it's an allegory for the way that culture has created that person's mental illness, and she's fully kind of descending into that. And then I think it's like we were talking about earlier, there's always a seed of truth with this stuff that becomes conspiracy that people can fixate on. Right. So there are chemicals, there are toxins, there are pesticides.
Yeah, microplastics.
Yes, but that shit gives people cancer. So it's like, but when you start fixating on it, in a way that detracts you from the ability to function in your everyday life, that's when it becomes a debilitating.
The threat of toxins is not put in a proper context.
Right, exactly. That fixation is becoming all-encompassing, and that's where we're seeing her descend into that state of madness and mental illness. Basically.
Totally, it's an absolute obsession, and also stress and what that's doing to her body. All right, that's it.
Great, lots of fun with this one.
Jesus Christ. It's tough. It gets tough.
I gotta say.
Yeah,
it's a fun movie.
Yeah, fun is one way.
It's a barrel of laughs.
Oh my god!
No, it's not an easy ride, but it's a very rewarding film.
Yeah, it is
incredible. Highly recommended.
Great filmmaking. Great
filmmaking.
Great performance.
Really, truly top of the game stuff. So, all right, everybody, that was 1 fucking hour on.
They needed a better poster, though.
They need a better poster.
I agree.
What the fuck with the poster?
Yeah, exactly. Let's do the 10 best movies with the worst posters.
I'm saying
video.
No, I think, like I was saying earlier, I think a New York Times article described it as set in the near future, and it was like, what? No, it's set in the past. Yeah, it's so weird.
Exactly.
Fired.
So poster fail for Safe, but it is a great film. Everyone should check it out if you haven't already. It's just incredible.
And it is maybe we didn't quite emphasize it enough, but it's pretty consistently darkly funny. So that's my little cheat.
It is.
Totally.
It is.
1 hour over.
Yeah, that's your cheat. All right. So that was 1 fucking hour on Safe, everybody. Episode 110. You just heard.
Jesus. 1995 in the can.
1995 is done. Let's talk about 1996. Okay. Very excited about this. Marcus will be back next week to talk with us about this film. Very exciting. Go ahead.
Not much of a shift, right? It's pretty tonally similar.
It's pretty on brand. It's
actually, I might not be totally kidding if you look at it thematically. But go ahead.
How about you go ahead? What are we going to do next week?
Well, it's another film about madness, is all I'm trying to say.
Oh yeah,
It really is. We're doing Cable Guy.
Yes. You heard it right. He's not joking this time. We're doing 1 fucking hour on The Cable Guy from 1996 next week. Very excited. There's a lot of other movies that are well trod upon from that year.
Masterpieces.
Masterpieces even that we could have done, and I'm sure a lot of you are going to be disappointed, but fuck it. We're going to do The Cable Guy because we alluded to it last week, right, with Natural Born Killers.
We did, oddly enough.
We talked about it in terms of people getting raised on television and
that was better social commentary than Natural Born Killers.
It is.
Right.
And we're going to
more effective,
Yeah, we're going to prove it to you. The Cable Guy next week, directed by Ben fucking Stiller, guys. So
he does a great job.
Yeah, we're going to get into that right off of Rémy's favorite, Reality Bites. This is his follow-up to Reality Bites.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's his Magnolia after Reality Bites.
So,
that old thing.
Kind of. All right, so we're gonna get into 1 fucking hour on The Cable Guy. So get your pre-watch in if you haven't seen it in a while. Guaranteed you probably haven't. It's gonna be a fun time. So we're gonna do that next week. And again, before we get out of here, just a quick shout out again to the 1 fucking hour Patreon, patreon.com/1 fucking hour. It's just $5 a month. You can sub for a month, if you want, just to hang out with us for a little bit, show a little support to the channel. That'd be great. Or you can hang around like some of the folks that have been with us since the beginning, which is probably about a year and a half ago. So shout out to you guys who are still subscribers from the OG time period. But yeah, sign up today. You get access to all of our bonus material. We have a new bonus vid dropping next week when Marcus gets back. And of course, you'll get 24-hour early access to all of our eps. Or you can become a momen by clicking the join button underneath the YouTube vid. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. Thank you, Rémy, for joining us, stepping in for Safe.
As always.
We really appreciate
Thanks, guys.
it. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate it.
When it's a bummer,
I'll be
Rémy's
here.
on.
Absolutely.
Guaranteed.
Ring,
Guaranteed.
Rémy. All right, everybody, but we can't leave you. What's this going to be?
Must be something.
All right,
it's an interview with the guy who did the poster.
Yeah. We can't leave you without your moment of Zen. All right, everybody. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next week for Cable Guy. All right. Take care. See you later. Bye-bye.
Where you see the danger in this film is when she is untouched, when she manages to, like I said, that last moment of the film where she is so excruciatingly alone and so sick.
Yeah.
And she finally succumbs to this idea that I'm just going to go inside herself to figure this out. And you're like, wait a minute. And that's, like I said, that was for me the moment of the deepest emotion, and shockingly so.
Right. It's almost like an inverted birth. It's sort of like going back into a womb.
Yeah. So like, why would that be okay? Why would that be a choice?
Exactly. But I think in some ways, all of these themes have only expanded as digital culture has expanded, as technology has expanded, as questions about health and illness and susceptibility to viruses.
Motherfucking goddamn orange peel beef.
That was wicked, man.